grant.
Oops.
All right, so do we have a motion to approve this
So
application
moved.
number 9 for the mini grant? Okay,
Moved by Angus.
thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, moved by Angus, second by Marianne. All in favor?
Second by Susan.
Sorry, second by Susan. Thank you. All right, so all in favor, Angus,
Aye.
Marianne,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
and Anne is a yes. All right, thank you, Amy.
All right, so we move on to small grant number 10. This is a single person household, receiving $31,010.64 a year. So she falls within the AMI. She's seeking flooring repairs. There was a leak with a pipe. Mobile home insurance covered part of the repair. This is one that Henry also went out and reviewed in person, because the homeowner's insurance was only able to cover a partial replacement. She has uneven floors in her home. She's got subfloors in there, down to the plywood, and we are seeking help from the program to repair the remaining damage that needs to be for the job to be complete. So there were 2 estimates. Henry his suggestion was to go with estimate number 2 first, which was at the 7,500. They were a job that came in and tried to complete and bring it to a safer point, and he felt more comfortable with the way that they had proposed the job.
Okay, and welcome, Bartlett.
Thank you.
All right, so for this particular applicant, based off of the repairs that they're going to do, will that take care of the situation with the flooring problem?
Yes, it would complete the job.
Okay. Well, I would advocate for this, just having a family situation similarly where the floors weren't fixed and then it created mold problems. So then that increased the price like threefold. So, so I would not want that to happen to this particular family. So that's my input. Other members, your thoughts?
I concur. We should proceed.
Yep, I support this applicant.
All right, do we have a motion to approve?
So
Make the
moved
motion.
by Angus.
Second.
All right, so moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, so with that, we have Angus voting to approve, yes or no? Angus,
Yes.
Marianne,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and Anne is a yes. All right, thank you, Amy, for application number 10. And now on to 11. Is that it?
Nope, 11 was already approved at the last meeting. Sorry, I'm getting when Outlook updates. There was supposed to be another one, small grant number 12. And since you guys didn't receive that, do you mind if I try and find the information within my emails and forward it to Maren so she can share it so you guys can view it? Or
So you said that all of these were sent to us on May 19th?
No, application number 12 was a newer one. That one I had forwarded over, I thought, to Lucia's for it to be included.
Yeah, she didn't include that one as far as I know. Unless, Marianne, that was part of the email that you
No,
forwarded?
we received the earlier ones, the ones we just presented, just not 12. Amy, you suggesting like that you can share it with us now and vote on it
I'm
now?
hoping I can find it. Hang on one second.
Maren, just as a side note, is there anyone else waiting in the waiting room?
We're not utilizing the waiting room. There's one other attendee, Mel Lyons Takeda.
I'm sorry, who did you say is waiting?
Mel Lyon.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mhm. So meanwhile, if you don't mind, I'll jump in on the rest of the small grant program. Just let the trust know that the town did put in a community one-stop grant to replenish the small grant program. We put in for $240,000. So that was the request. Those grants are reviewed over the summer and announced usually late October or early November. So at that point, we would know whether or not we would be getting additional grant funding for this program.
Any questions for Maren on the third item under the small grants program topic? Great, thank you so much, Maren. So Amy, I guess we'll give it another minute. If you can't find it, then we'll need to postpone that particular application till the next meeting.
So Maren, I just forwarded it to you. Are you able to see that in your email?
Mhm. Oh, yep. Um,
And Maren, if you wouldn't mind asking Lucia to please make sure that she forwards those on.
She'll be back in the office on Tuesday. She's been out this week. 2, 3. So this one was 09. Did you send me several, Amy?
They should all be in the same PDF.
Okay, thank you.
9, 10,
12.
12.
Okay. Okay, so Amy, I'm sharing it now so everybody can see it.
All right. So this is a disabled adult with an adult son. The income still falls within the AMI. The adult is on disability and the son is working, so that the income is inclusive. They're looking for roof replacement. So they received 3 different estimates. And they had already reached out to Habitat for Humanity, so they are one that we would be doing in conjunction with Habitat for Humanity. So my request was to, after Henry providing the encouragement to move forward with estimate number 1, the $9,450 for their roof replacement. If the grant, if you guys are willing to move forward with the grant for $7,500, Habitat is willing to work with them. I already received a letter from them confirming that they would be willing to help the family with the remaining balance so that they can pay it off over time rather than upfront. It's a 2-person household seeking assistance through the replacement for a 24-year-old roof. The home is heavily wooded area, so there is a lot of debris that falls onto the shingles, and moss is unavoidable. Habitat application was submitted and approved, hoping to utilize the program to reduce the amount and length of time payment plan for the remaining balance that the grant doesn't cover.
Okay. Any discussion?
So is the 9450 an estimate for Habitat to do the work? And then we're basically helping subsidize what Habitats are doing?
So Habitat doesn't do this type of work. They bring in outside contractors. So this is an actual contractor that would be coming in to do the roof replacement. Habitat would just be providing the no interest loan to cover the remaining balance.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions, members? Seeing none, does anyone have a motion for approving this?
I move we approve small grant number 12.
Second.
All right, thank you, Susan and Angus. Any further discussion? All right, let's go ahead and vote on this. Susan,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Angus,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Marianne,
Yes.
and Anna's a yes. Okay. So we have that. All right, so Amy, just to make sure, for the future that doesn't happen, you might want to go ahead and copy Maren as well as Lucia, just to make sure that gets added in.
Will do.
Thank you. Now we can go on to talk about LRAP. And as I understand, we don't have any new applications for LRAP. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. And then we did have some information from you, Amy, related to the policies and guidelines that were set up last September. And the new version says July 1, 2025. Were the household income limits the only thing that has changed from September?
Yes.
Thank you. So I know that we had the email from Maren back on May 19th that gave us all the LRAP web page, and I think that clearly outlines the process and expectations. However, I know that there was to be some discussion about what happens when an applicant exceeds the time extensions, and our colleague Matthew asked if we could postpone this discussion until the July meeting because he wanted to be a part of it. So what do you all say about that?
Sure.
Is someone actually updating the policy between now and or proposing drafts? And whom is doing that? Or are we just?
Well, as it relates to the extensions, I think that's part of what Matthew wanted to participate on, because one of the items that was in the packet that I forwarded was Matthew's input on extensions.
I'm not asking that we vote on it today. My question is, are we actually planning on July on having a new proposal to vote on? And if so, who is working on that?
I don't think there's a new proposal. I think what Matthew requested is that there be a further discussion about the extension timeframe. And then after that, there might be some more work to be done on the guidelines. If the board decides that that's what we want to do, is change it in some way. All right, so seeing that there is an okay approval to table this for the next time for Matthew to be able to participate. Okay. So also under LRAP, I sent out a copy of the CPC grant agreement exhibit. So for folks who were on the board last year, you might remember that around this time frame, we had the grant agreement that was put into place for the first time, and there were 2 exhibits to that grant agreement that were signed by both the Affordable Housing Trust and by CPC. Accordingly, the following years, we're supposed to add on another exhibit to that particular agreement. What you see is what I sent around to Carolyn Mueller, who is the chair of CPC. I sent it to Diane Crory, and I also sent it on to Michelle, the town accountant. So Carolyn said that she's fine with it, and if we approve it tonight, then they can approve it tomorrow night at CPC's meeting, excuse me. However, Carolyn did say that there was one particular issue, and that is that at this moment, there isn't $106,000 in the AHT bucket. So in other words, the balance right now in that bucket is $91,558 as of the end of May. So once they get their state match in November, then the remainder of the 15,000, whatever that amount is, will be available. So she asked whether or not the Affordable Housing Trust would be okay if Michelle in accounting splits the payments to the Affordable Housing Trust into 2 payments. So maybe 90,000 within 60 days, and then the remainder by the end of the year, the end of this calendar year. So when I contacted Michelle about this, she said that from her perspective, that would be fine.
Do you have any concerns with that, Anna?
No, I think that it's more of an accounting issue than anything else. We're still transferring the money, within 6-month time period. So I don't have any concerns about that. Any other comments or questions about that?
I'm fine with that, splitting it like that.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any comments on the language in Exhibit C, I think it was?
Well, should we then state that the initial disbursement will be 90-something odd thousand, and then the subsequent disbursement will be the 15,000, and then it should be good?
Okay. All right. So you are recommending that the exhibit be amended to include that language, that 90,000 within 60 days, and then the remaining 16,000 by 12/31/25. Is that correct, Angus?
Yes, please, Anna.
All right. So any comments or questions about that?
Well, do we need to do that? I mean, the appropriation has been voted, and we're just talking about when the payment is made. And I mean, I don't see that it matters if we put that in the agreement or not.
Okay. Maren, from a administrative perspective, what are your thoughts?
The funds will be drawn down over 12 months, so it has no impact on how the program operates.
Okay. So Angus, it sounds like we don't need to make that modification on the exhibits. So are you okay with that?
That's fine. That's fine with me.
Okay. Great. All right. Well, thank you for making that clarification. And it sounds like we're all on board. So may I have a motion to approve the exhibit to transfer funds from CPC to Affordable Housing Trust?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Susan and Angus, thank you very much. All right, so all those in favor Let's go ahead and start with Mark,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes,
Angus,
Aye.
Susan,
Yes.
and Marianne.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. Okay. Great. So, Amy, are you still on? You are. Is there anything else that you would like to discuss before you head out?
Nope, I'm all set.
Hey,
Unless, with Bartlett being back, if we wanted to review the revisions that were proposed by Marianne.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to review and vote on the changes we proposed to small grant program.
All right. So let's do that. So let's go ahead and go back to strategy 4.1, talking about the small grants program. It was the second item on the agenda, the policy language for eligibility. And so Bartlett, I don't know if you were you came in at the tail end of any of that discussion, but what we were wanting to get through was the proposed changes that Marianne had recommended in her document called SGP guidelines.
okay,
Bartlett, it's the change you already saw that we worked on together.
okay. Then it's probably okay if we worked on it together.
And so Angus and I had some concerns about it, that it felt a little too open-ended. And so prior to your arriving, it didn't seem like there was going to be an affirmative vote on that. So I postponed it. But if you're here
okay.
now, we can have further discussion and or move to a vote on this.
So, Marianne, I did have a question. I know we worked on this together, but we changed the must under homeownership for not having to should, and then we added the extenuating circumstances line. I'm wondering if it still should be a must, and then the extenuating circumstances allow us to override the must, because right now we can't. I'm trying to figure out if the extenuating circumstances are meant to allow us to, I think the extenuating circumstances were allowing us to override either of the musts, the income or the home ownership or even the grant amount, but those others are still musts. So I'm not sure why this one should be a should and the other ones are left alone. Do you recall?
I don't.
Did what I said make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm not sure what the language should be. It seems like kind of a detailed policy question that I'm not sure.
Well, typically speaking, in order of rigidity, shall is the most rigid, then must, and then should. So from that standpoint, should is the most lenient of those three words. Shall, must, or should. So must is kind of middle of the road. And I would feel more favorable to it if it was a must as well.
So that makes sense. So we still have the ability to override, but the language says must, which is stronger than shall. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I think it's probably good to have it as a must and, make it so that extenuating circumstances are really unusual and rare and not normal business. It'll just sound better that we have a rule, but we have some flexibility.
Okay.
And
So any other discussion or comments?
yes, can we clarify again that this does not apply to the amount, to the 7,500? Because Mark just put that in again in
Yeah.
his statement. He said the amount of the grant. And I thought earlier this evening we said 7,500 could not be changed.
That That was my understanding too, Susan. And Mark, I don't know if that's what you meant by the grant guidelines, but I was not interpreting that to mean that we could go over the 7,500.
I think we can decide what extenuating circumstances mean however we choose, right?
Well, one case is the application criteria,
Right.
and the other is the amount, right? I kind of see those as two different things. And I thought we were addressing here the application criteria, whether they qualify, but not the amount.
Right.
So if people never want to vote for a grant over $7,500, then we're free to never vote for a grant over $7,500 and give Amy guidance that we're not open to grants over $7,500. We're also free, I believe, to say that someone really needs an $9,000 grant and we see them as worthy and they fall under the extenuating circumstances. And we could tell Amy to allow that one through. So I don't understand what the real issue is here, because we have the right to vote against any of these that we don't believe are extenuating circumstances or determine what those circumstances are. We had one a few months ago that wanted the trees removed, and we decided that though it, and it would push them over the amount, or we decided that the trees didn't count. We could have allowed them to do the trees and called that something that they would have to repay, right? So I'm not sure where the line is we're really arguing about here. If people don't want to vote for one over 7,500, then we won't. So
the way I saw the trees, Mark, was that that it fell outside of the grant guidelines for what's an essential home repair. So that's kind of how I was seeing the grant guidelines. It's not the amount, but the specific nature of the work that was being done. So that's where I saw the exception for the trees, not in the amount.
Yeah,
Right,
I mean,
correct.
we could view them both ways.
May I just say that the inclusion of grant guidelines in this modification opens up everything. It opens up the amount, it opens up the criteria, whether they're a Littleton resident or not, and several other parts of the grant guidelines. And that really is the problem.
I don't think it really opens it up to anybody outside of Littleton.
No, I'm just giving.
I think it's looking to open up the language so that the trust has the ability to say, based on the circumstances, the trust has the ability to make the decision as to whether they want to approve these certain situations because they don't fit into a perfect square box. It's opening it up so that there is the ability to look at the whole big picture for the family or the household and say whether or not they wish to move forward with the program. And that's up to the trust. So it's putting the decision on the trust to make those decisions based on the circumstances.
Which was already on us. Right.
Right, but now the language is in there, which wasn't before, which was the problem.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken.
May I then propose that we change our grant guidelines to read perhaps or other criteria as seen fit by the trust?
But that opens it up even more.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the grant guidelines means that the whole grant is thrown overboard.
I'm not sure I'm not following.
I think what Angus is saying is that based off of the language that was just proposed, that opens it up even more.
Well,
I think the biggest concern that I'm hearing is the words extenuating circumstances. It's not defined.
And that was somewhat right, because we wanted to leave it open. And again, with the trust being basically the stewards, right, and being responsible for using the judgment of what that could be.
All right, so right now, where we stand is what we're seeing on the screen is what is proposed, and the change that was just discussed to go back to the original language. So that means that that first amendment to this does not stay. So the sentence would read, the homeowner must not have an interest in other real estate. And then the additional language in yellow is the proposed new language.
Are we interpreting where it says or grant guidelines? Is that the dollar amount, or is that sort of something else, or both?
From what I'm hearing, that seems to be what's causing the confusion.
Yeah.
Right.
I think where we're reaching is that it's both. Initially, I was just considering that as the details of what a repair is. But I think, Bartlett, I'm with you. I think now we're considering both. And given the change to must, I'm still okay with the grant guidelines then.
Yeah.
And then the trust to be voting.
Yeah. I want to say I remember a discussion about the grant limits from several months ago, where we decided to limit the grants to 7,500, but that in cases where during construction, more problems are found and the cost of the repair goes up because of unknown discoveries, that then we would consider allowing, more money to be spent, because it's required to finish the job and it's necessary. But I don't think we have to say anything about that. And I think we decided not to say anything about that. That was going to be an arrangement between us and Amy. Do other people remember that?
Yes.
I do.
Okay. So if we go with an understanding that grant guidelines is just a general, the details of the grant as it's written, or of these guidelines as written, and not that it does not specifically include the dollar amount up front, then I could see leaving it. But I think we need to have an understanding of whether that grant guidelines phrase includes the dollar amount. And I would say we don't include the dollar amount, but that's something that appears to be fixed.
So then, would the language be, based on what you just said, Bartlett, given extenuating circumstances, the trust may consider and approve applications that fall outside of the income, ownership, or grant guidelines, excluding the amount of.
Well, I think that we should just have that be under our understanding of what we mean. I don't think somebody would interpret that as including the dollar amount.
So can I ask let's just say we just approved one that was $7,500 for a roof, and Habitat is basically giving them a no interest loan for $2,500. If they didn't get that loan from Habitat and still needed a roof, we're not going to help them with a roof because they can't afford the other $2,500. They have no recourse from us. We're going to say, sorry, we can't give you any money. That's what we want the program to become?
Well, I think that's what it is.
That's what it is.
That's what it is.
This allows us to say that, no, we could give you the $10,000, but we're going to request repayment on some future event, right? Yeah. That's what this allows us to do, rather than tell them, no, they can't have any money because they can't afford to do the project. I
think it's a valid point, Mark. Originally, I was with Bartlett to not include an increase in the number. But in thinking about it further and also reflecting on a conversation in our last meeting, when Matthew brought up this exact point, about what if we have money and someone needs $30,000, but they repay it? I feel like we could accommodate that without further language changes to this document. So I actually like the fact that it gives us more latitude.
Well, at this point, my contribution is that whatever we say must be documented, because I know further down the road in 6 months, sometimes we forget. Just as there was documentation in the minutes and in a specific document about the LRAP program, and we were bickering about it until Maren brought the document to us. So whatever changes we make, we absolutely have to document it so that it can be retrieved in the future.
That's what this document is. What else would you like to have documented?
Well, there was some comment that it should be an agreement amongst us and that we understand that it doesn't include the 7,500. But I think that if we make any changes, we must specifically say that there's no change in the 7,500.
Okay.
The grant is 7,500, and that's what we've been dishing out. If someone comes with a $10,000 project, then they should source the 3,000 with or without us. But that doesn't stop us from giving them the 7,500.
So given what you, I'm sorry, Sue, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, what I worry a little bit about, and maybe I'm way off base, but if this program is now known as like 7,500, and so people who really need a small grant for something or a small project done, they would consider that. If they know that there's a possibility it could be wide open, even if they have to pay it back, that could just overwhelm us with requests. And I don't know how Amy feels about that. She may tell me I'm all wet. So that could be. And then, when you start into the town being involved in people paying back amounts, that's another whole process that I don't know we want to get involved in. Those were just two thoughts that popped into my head.
Yeah.
So I agree. We don't necessarily want to get involved in the repayment. That's why we made them a grant and didn't put that condition. There was
Right.
a lot of discussion when we first started about whether or not to have that condition. And when we got together, Marianne Bartlett and I, with Maren and everyone else, we decided not to put in that condition, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that would be an extenuating circumstance under which we would, if someone actually needed more, we could potentially put it in if we so desire. It doesn't mean we have to, but we can, right? Right now and I agree, and we can give Amy guidelines right now that says, unless, someone is in complete and dire straits, do not bring us any application that's more than $7,500. We won't approve it. That's entirely up to our prerogative on what we do, right? So I don't think this gives us more leeway, but it doesn't force us to use any of that leeway.
Yeah, I agree. And to Susan's point, I would say, because I kind of agree, I think if we state the language here, be too specific about going over 7,500, then that will plant a seed. I think that that can be our interpretation. And like you said, it can be something that, as you said, Mark, dire circumstances, and Amy's not going to bring us, like things that are not essential. So I'm coming around to liking this with the one change that someone made here, back to must.
All right, so this is the language that we're reviewing now in yellow. And do we have a motion? Are we ready for that?
I'll make a motion to approve the amended small grant program guidelines as amended and presented on the screen.
Second.
All right, Mark and Marianne. So let's go ahead and take a vote. That's Susan,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Marianne,
Yes.
Angus,
Abstain.
and Anna's a yes. So, all right.
So with that understanding, would that mean that we can review the grant applicant number 4 for the trees or no?
Yes, let's move forward, please.
Okay. All right. So in the packet was included a letter from Steve Whitten, the tree warden in town. He went out to the property in question for grant application number 4 and did an assessment. He identified 6 oak trees that have a high risk assessment that could cause damage to the house and may be responsible for moss growth on the roof. The 6 oak trees identified show signs of decay and broken limbs and dead branches. He recommended the removal of these trees to mitigate any damage from impact with the home. There is a cluster of oak trees on the side of the home that may need further assessment, but he would agree with the removal of trees is necessary to provide a clean and safe environment for the homeowner. Included with the package should have been that letter with the client's address and name redacted, as well as a site drawing that Steve provided, identifying where those 3 homes lead, saying 6 oak trees numbered for removal, front of property, rear of property, and then the trees on the side of the home were in question. The resident also went out and got 2 different estimates from companies that own their own crane. So these would be companies that do not have to rent a crane. Oops, I didn't realize that. Sorry about that. These would be from companies that don't require the rental fee. So we had received 2 estimates, the client had received 2 estimates that were they were very different in their assessment of the property. So with Steve going out and providing his assessment, and with these 2 new estimates, we are receiving a much more consistent quote. The companies that are looking, one of them said that they would be removing the 6 oak trees, and that came in around $5,000. And then another one said they would be removing the 6 trees for $6,000. And again, this is for the remaining balance to be applied to with one of these estimates, primarily the lower one, which would be the $5,000. So based on that information, that's what we were hoping to open up those guidelines for, is so that we can take a look at these and take into consideration these types of requests. They don't necessarily fit into those perfect guidelines for the program.
All right, thank you, Amy, for that additional explanation and the letter from the tree warden. So any comments or questions on this one?
Do we have the letter? I don't see it.
It was in our packet.
Which document is that?
It was
called Site Drawing Steve W with redacted. That's the first one. And then the other one is.
It should have just, site drawing.
I'm looking at the documents for the 6/17 meeting, and I don't see that document in there.
It's the one from Lucia, not from Anna. And the first one starts with tree risk, and the second one is site drawing.
Right.
Mara, do you have the spreadsheet or do you have the amount for the remaining amount? I believe it's, I think the,
Yeah, no, I don't have the spreadsheet, but it would be for the remaining amount up to the 75
75.
for this address.
Okay.
There's-
I want to,
I want to
number I
say 43 something,
recall
but I'm drawing a blank.
hold on. Might be able to find it in a previous email. I want to say it was like 4,115. Hold on.
Mark, were you able to find the documents?
So I found them. Thank you.
Mhm.
So sorry, Amy, what's the final amount that we're asking to approve? We're being asked to approve?
I'm trying to verify.
You're trying to approve the amount that's being requested.
The remaining amount. So, okay, yes. So 4,112 was previously approved for the gutters and soffits. The remaining amount was of the grant up to the 7,500 was being requested to go towards the tree removal.
All right, any other comments or questions before we move for a motion?
Well, I want to say that I just paid to have 2 large trees taken down at my house because they do present a danger of falling. One of them already fell on the house, and one was leaning on the house. And I think between the damage the trees do to the roof and the potential danger, removing some of them is a good idea.
All right, do I have a motion?
So
Yeah, so I would support and make a motion. The exact number just isn't clear to me. Could we just approve then the balance? So I think it's roughly 3,400, is that right?
$3,388.
Okay. So
And this is SGP number 4.
Yes. They were previously approved for the 4,112.
okay, so make a motion to approve SGP 04 and the amount that Amy specified.
So, Amy, can I ask what the estimate was actually for? Because one of the estimates had in stump grinding and things in there originally.
Okay, so she had received 2 new estimates, which was a recommendation from the tree warden to seek out the estimates from companies that have their own like stump or crane and all that. But the stump grinding, I don't see that included in these 2 new estimates. And I don't know if she's necessarily worried about that. I think she's more worried about the trees.
Stump grinding is usually specified specifically as included or not included, because
it doesn't specify that in these.
Yeah,
it says the removal of the 6 oak trees, 4 in the front yard, 2 in the backyard, and Steve had gone around and marked the trees of concern with ribbon, and the 2 different tree companies that she brought in agreed with what he had noted. But it just identifies the crane. It doesn't say anything about the stump grinding.
Right.
If she wished to do that, that would be, she understood that she'd be covering anything remaining.
Any other questions, Mark?
No.
Okay. Any other comments from anyone else? So we had Marianne provide a motion for SGP number 4 in the amount of $3,388. Do we have a second?
So actually, I do have another question. For Amy. Amy, is the household a size of 3 or 4? Because in the original application, it was going back and forth.
The income was calculating it for all 4. Even the one that's not currently in the home that is in a long-term care facility. Which they're privately paying for, the long-term care facility through a long-term care program as well.
Amy,
So they're currently being reimbursed for the long-term care facility payments, but that will end come December.
But Amy, if I recall, you and I sat with that, and they met the guidelines for a 3-person household and still made the income, met the income
Yes.
guidelines.
They've met the income guidelines for a 3 or 4.
Mhm. Any other comments or questions? We still have a standing motion from Mary Ann,
I'll second it.
second from Bartlett. All right, so all those in favor, Bartlett,
I'm in favor, yes.
Mark,
I'm going to abstain.
okay, Mary Ann,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes.
Angus,
Yes.
and Anna's a yes. So that SGP number 4 is approved.
Thank you very much.
All right, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, so let's move on then on our agenda. Strategy 4.4, which is 2.4, 119 Tehadawon Road. So Mark, you have that. What is the update, please?
So we just got mail from council that everything has been agreed to for the closing between council and Habitat. And they're working on setting up a closing date. There's a couple documents that I don't know if it's you or me, Anna, will end up having to sign, but they're going to get in touch with us soon with further details.
Okay. Yeah. Please go ahead and sign those documents. And this is technically your project from the standpoint that you've been the lead on it for the last year. So that would be great.
So, yeah. And Habitat wanted the closing by like somewhere in mid-July because they were going to be applying for grants and they needed control of the property by then. So.
Right. Any comments or questions on this? All right. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that you're moving that forward.
Working at the speed of government.
I love it when Susan laughs. Means it was particularly funny. All right. So moving on then to strategy 2.1, Durkee Farmhouse. So we had a site visit on June 3rd with Laura from MHP came out and several members were there. Bartlett, would you like to recap the visit, please?
Well, we walked through the barn and I was very enthusiastic about the barn, and Laura was less enthusiastic about the barn and said that converting barns is difficult, and my understanding was that she had people who could or would come out and evaluate the barn for housing and tell us whether a conversion is feasible or not. There was a lot of discussion about the property lines and the setbacks and the wetlands, those setbacks. But I think generally it was a pretty positive walk through the barn and the road, near the road part of the site.
So I think the question wasn't not whether you could convert the barn into housing, it's whether you could convert the barn into affordable housing, whether you could generate enough rent to support the conversion at an affordable rate.
Well, yes. We did not discuss the house in any detail.
Anyone else have any comments about the visit? Okay. So yes, there is more work to be done. She being Laura had various ideas. She provided various comments about how emerging developers might be interested in this particular project. So we'll see. Bartlett, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, this is a very slow moving project.
So
I don't really know how to speed it up.
Bartlett, I have a question.
Sure.
Did she specifically state any particular reasons she was concerned about barn conversions? And did she find anything that triggered her to suggest that it sounded like she wasn't particularly in favor of this conversion at this time?
Well, she was, I mean, we're talking about affordable housing, and she said that a lot of barn conversions become market housing, and they end up being quite big units. And it was my understanding was that making it into 4 units, it just involves more construction and more kitchens and, more plumbing, and that it would be difficult or impossible to make the numbers work with affordable units in there. So she said it was a nice barn, and she actually, was quite creative. And I thought about, the issue of changing the floor-to-floor height in the barn. So she was helpful in that regard. But it just she thought that it was going to be easier to get a developer to build new construction affordable units on the grass and on the open space, rather than have affordable units in the barn. Just that it's going to be very difficult to do.
So
what about, I know that the trust had indicated an interest in 2 and 3 bedroom units. What about downsizing to 1 and 2 bedroom units?
We didn't talk about I don't remember us talking specifically about the number of units. We did mention it, but I don't think there was a strong direction one way or another.
I think Angus means that instead of 2 and 3 bedroom units, would we have fewer of those and more 1 bedroom units? Is that what you mean, Angus?
That is correct. Perhaps it might make the costs less expensive, less plumbing, and less to do.
So I think that's part of what she will have in her recommendations. Right. Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, there was a lot of talk about the number of units. Is the number that is important in figuring out the cost per unit. So, from that point of view, more units is better. I'm not sure where the trade-offs are in that particular equation.
So at the talk that Marianne Marin and I were at last week, someone was saying that when you go beyond 2 units in a building, the code completely changes, making it much more expensive to build. So that might be one of the issues with the barn.
Yeah, I mean, I was told that anything over 3 units, you have to sprinkle it and put in, fire alarms that go to the fire station, which is an additional expense. But that would be true if we build a 6-unit building next to the barn.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it was cheaper to do that in new construction than retrofitting on some of those things. So
I don't either.
All right. So anything else regarding that site visit?
that site visit or that property?
That site visit. So regarding the Hopewell application, that was submitted, and so we should be hearing back on the acceptance of the application. And then with regard to the insurance, so it's just been incredibly frustrating. I know that Diane Dickerson has been working with the broker and finally received something today with Jim Duggan's help to really push on them. Finally received something today at 4:30. I was in the middle of traffic, so I haven't looked at it. What I saw from the email itself instead of the documents was the amount of $12,444 for 1 year. And then right before we came on, Diane Dickerson called me and she said that there is a option if we did not want to do the full policy, that we do just a general liability and then self-insure for the rest. I said that I had no idea what she was talking about and that this was going to require some more time. And but since this is the last meeting before the existing policy expires on July 3rd, it does warrant conversation. So Bartlett, as the project lead for Durkee Farm and co-chair, I need to lean on you to work on this to try to get it resolved. But I would like to open the discussion about the proposed amount and your direction on how to proceed.
Well, I haven't read the policy. I did read the $12,000 number. I think $1,000 a month is a lot to pay in insurance. I think that there's a good chance that the house will get demolished. And I don't know what the point is. I mean, I don't think we can assume that it's going to get rebuilt. And I don't know what the point is of insuring a building that's at least 50% likely to get demolished.
Well, I think my biggest concern is always if somebody gets injured on the property while it's in our ownership, and that's probably the most important thing.
Yeah, that would be the liability.
Mm-hmm.
The other insurance would be for fire or a hurricane or some kind of destructive thing. And that's what I'm questioning is, do we need insurance against that building being destroyed in some way?
That's an open question for the members.
That's a question for the group.
I don't think we need to insurance against the building being destroyed. I think it's going to fall over on its own soon enough.
Well, maybe we should insure it then. I mean, how much insurance is there on the building? Do we know what the policy limits are if the building is destroyed, or we'd have to read the document for that?
Correct. Receiving something at the 11-hour 59 minutes is
Right.
not,
Yeah.
so
2 hours before the
there's
meeting.
nothing more we can do about that. Yeah. So I'm more than happy to give you the existing policy if you'd like to review those. It's easier on paper than trying to look at it online. But getting back to Bartlett's question, how does everybody feel about not insuring the building and just having the liability? And I don't know how much those two are intertwined.
I'm good with it. Just the liability.
I am as well.
All right, so at this moment, we don't know what the price tag is for just that. So what is the trust's intention then to provide Bartlett with the full amount and then reduce it down to just the liability?
So I'll make a motion that we approve up to $12,000 for insurance with, for liability insurance on the building. Since we know the total policy is $12,000, just the liability has to be much less than that, but we don't know how much less without you looking at the policy.
Do we want to maintain any fire insurance on the barn? I believe the policy that we have covers both buildings.
If we can separate the two, then I would maintain insurance on the barn. If not, if it's easy to separate, then separate and do the barn, but not the house. If it's not, I'll leave it up to your discretion how you want to proceed. How's that? I think it would be worth maintaining insurance on the barn, but if it's too much of a pain or too expensive, or if you decide it's too expensive, then don't do it.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor to approve up to $12,000 for liability and giving Bartlett some leeway in also maintaining insurance on the barn.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, Angus. All right, so with that motion on the table, let's vote on that. Mary Ann?
Yes.
Bartlett?
Yes.
Angus?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
And Ann is a yes. Okay.
Before we move on from this property, I do have a couple of questions. One is the letter Jim sent said that we were using CPC funds to purchase the property, which I think we changed to not use CPC funds to purchase the property. So I don't know if that affects our application at all.
No, we already purchased the property, as in past tense.
I know, but at a recent meeting, we voted to repay the CPC money so that we could do things and not have the house be affordable. Remember, we went through this whole discussion that if we bought the property with CPC, the house had to be affordable.
Right, we had the discussion, we did not have the vote. It's my recollection.
That's my recollection too. You can at any point go back and revisit that.
Right, and in fact, what Laura recommends is we hold off on that vote until she has provided her recommendations about what to do with the house and the barn.
Okay, so then my second question, I think might be okay, and Maren probably can answer. So since the house was currently purchased with CPC funds, we can insure it with CPC funds. But if it's not with CPC, purchased with CPC, are we allowed to insure it with CPC? Does that make sense?
I understand the question. I can certainly ask counsel.
Oh.
But at the moment, it stands that it was purchased with CPC money.
That's correct.
So we pay the bill and then we change it.
But
Okay.
does it really matter? At the time it was purchased was CPC funds, but we're making alterations in order to proceed with the project in terms of perhaps maybe selling later and so on. So I think it's still valid.
Well, the question is, once it's no longer part of paid for with CPC funds, what can we use CPC funds for on that property?
My understanding, nothing. But again, that's the conversation that you and Bartlett had with town council. So you would probably know better than us.
We didn't have the conversation on what we could spend on the property. We had the conversation about whether the house had to be part of affordable. So we can revisit on the other front, but we didn't have that part of the conversation.
All right. Do you have any other questions, Mark?
Nope.
Okay. All right. So thank you all. And Bartlett, thank you for working on that.
Well, you and I will be in touch about if I find anything out about insurance.
Yeah, and I'll get you those policies. All right, so the next item is strategy 2.3, King Street Common Development. So one of the items that I sent to the members was the King Street Common decision, and I wanted to point out a couple of quick things per our discussion that we had back on May 19th. And that is to reference that particular document. If you look on page 10, there is a sentence in there about the expectation of when the senior affordable units are to be built. On page 11, it lists the number of units for seniors and that they are at 30 to 60% AMI. And then on page 12, on items B and C, it uses the word shall, which typically means that a shall indicates a mandatory obligation or a requirement, and it means that the party is required to perform a specific action. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody had this document, because it seems like from what was discussed at the May 19th meeting that there is a belief by Marin that Littleton cannot compel Lupoli to build the senior affordable units. I believe that Littleton can compel them to build them. Our town leaders just have to have the political will and the financial commitment, because we might have to sue them to do so. So I just wanted to make sure that in moving forward that you all as trustees are aware of what is written and what is expected. And that also you be aware of the times when Lupoli and crew, be it his engineer, etc., are planning to be in Littleton, because that poses an opportunity to be able to ask questions. So with that in mind, it's my understanding that the next time his development company is going to be in Littleton is on July 10th. Now that might change, I don't know. But I would definitely recommend that Affordable Housing Trust members either watch or attend that meeting. Any comments or questions?
It's the planning board meeting.
Yeah. Maureen, can you confirm when Lupoli Company is coming to Littleton?
I don't have an agenda for July 10th yet. I believe Lupoli team is working through the town administrator's office to get in front of the select board sooner than later.
All right, so if no other comments or questions, then we'll move on to our board business. Marin, the budget for next year, you requested that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just helped my thought process to put this all together in one document. Sent out just a quick draft budget, housing consultant services for the Assabet Regional Housing Consortium. That's the one, the quarterly bill that we get through the town of Hudson for consulting services. The most recent regional training opportunity that we had was the one at Devon's, and I believe Mark and Marianne joined Cooper and I at that workshop. And so that is estimated at $3,600 for fiscal year 26. That includes some optional hours where housing trusts or planning staff can reach out to the housing consultant and get help with whatever ongoing issues we might have. I would recommend on the second line to set up a training budget. Sometimes trainings come up without a lot of notice, and that way it would allow trust members to attend without checking back with the trust. Recommended amount of 500, and again, all of these are up for your discussion and vote, your consideration. LRAP, you've already voted previously to set the LRAP amount for FY26 at $120,000. EMAP and ERAP programs are currently not active. Staffing is currently covered under the planning department budget. There's no proposal to change that. Just thought it wise to include it here so that we note it. Same thing with legal fees. Affordable Housing Trust has not received any separate legal bills from Town Council for a couple of years. Then we jump to the Durkee, 260 Foster Street, the insurance. According to the prior conversation, would bump that amount up to $12,000 maximum. We will have advertising costs if we decide to move forward with a request for proposals. Mowing, I wasn't sure if that would need to be done again this year. When it was done previously, that was $500. And supplies and miscellaneous in case any more reinforcement or new locks or etc. is needed. And then and not for vote at this time, but for consideration for the future, the Durkee repayment of MHP program would be up to $35,000 only if the Affordable Housing Trust decides not to move forward with the development. And another thing on our horizon is the Habitat for Humanity grant for the Tehadawon parcel. Now that the parcel will be transferring, that will be coming up hopefully sooner than later. I believe, if I recall, that grant agreement has up to $100,000, but that vote on the exact amount and that transfer would be at a later time.
All right.
That's the staff recommendation anyway.
All right. Thank you, Maureen. So members, what comments or questions do you have for this particular item?
It all makes sense to me. I think it's a good idea to set aside some funds for training so that we don't have to do it at the time. I like that. Question is I generally don't know how much these sessions cost. Is 500 enough? What's your experience there? What have we spent in the past?
So if trust members are interested in going to the CPTC annual meeting, that's usually just under $100. I believe some of the MHP trainings, a lot of those are free. But then there are some costs for like the MHP annual conference. I believe that was around $100 per member.
In the session that we went to last Thursday, that was included in our membership, so there was no cost to that.
Correct. Mm-hmm. So it ranges.
So it seems like 500 might be reasonable then. And if
Yeah.
there's anything beyond that, it can also be something else that the trust approves, so.
Correct.
Yep. Seems like a good number.
No, I think the budget sounds reasonable.
And Bartlett, is there anything else that you can think of for Durkee that needs to be included right now? And if not, like I said, we can always add it at a later time.
I'm not thinking of anything right now. I mean, we'll settle the insurance. I don't know if we need mowing. We probably do need some security, because the plywood has been moved off of the bulkhead door into the basement.
Ann and I moved it back.
Right, but it was originally screwed down, so we couldn't probably ask the highway department to go out and screw it down again.
No.
So do you recall what that amount was? And we can go ahead and include it in this.
Well, I mean, it would be one guy for half an hour, so I don't know, I don't think it would be very much.
All right, how about we add in another $300 on top of what Maren has listed?
Okay.
All right, so
So Maren, can we pay for all of these things out of CPC funds, or
At the moment, yeah.
I didn't know if the consulting and the training, the trust member training counted as
Yes.
CPC eligible?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you.
They're in supportive housing.
Mhm.
all right, so any other comments or questions? If not, what we're looking at is 3,600 housing consulting services, $500 member training and education, LRAP 120,000. Durkee includes 12,000 for insurance, advertising of 800, and I assume that's for the proposed RFP, Maren?
That was my thought process.
Okay. Mowing for 500, supplies miscellaneous 500, plus 300 for securing the home again in the bulkhead. And I believe that's what we have right now.
Like a motion to approve that budget.
Second,
That's what needs.
All right. Bartlett made the motion, Angus seconds. All right, so all in favor, Angus,
yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and where are they? Susan?
Yes.
And Marianne. Marianne?
She's muted.
Yes.
Okay, and Anna's a yes. All right. Okay, so we've got that taken care of, and
It helps accounting as well.
all right. Well, Michelle helps us, so we'll help her.
Mhm.
All right, so next on the agenda is Marianne and Mark. Discuss exploring the next affordable housing trust development.
So, Anna, we didn't really talk about this being on the agenda. Is this based on our conversation from last week about the meeting
Maren,
that,
Maren added this to the agenda.
oh, okay. All right. I am happy to share some notes that I took from the last meeting that we can walk through. That might make it easier. Let me see. Unless, Maren, there's someplace specific you'd like to start. Let me see.
So, well, Marianne and I met with Maren last week, I guess it was, I'm not really sure exactly anymore. But and the idea was with the Tahadawan property moving along, we thought we should start looking at what our next affordable project could be. So we started talking about if there were town parcels or other parcels we should be looking at for affordable housing, and what the process is for that. With some follow-up, we've been talking to Kim Quovo, who's the Chief Procurement Officer for the town at the moment, if we were about what the regulations were if we were to try to buy a property. So we've had email conversations with her, and we'll probably try to meet with her in person one day next week. She's on vacation this week, so nothing's been scheduled yet.
So I had just taken some notes from our meeting. These aren't official minutes, but just if you'd like, we can walk through the properties we discussed. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So first one was 13 Shattuck Street. Just the notations here, plus or benefits. If it doesn't say anything, it's more neutral or just a statement, and the minus is a negative. And then we talked about next steps. So 13 Shattuck Street is highlighted as an attractive property for us. Location near the senior center on town sewer, would require some rezoning. The downside or the negative is that the town doesn't own the land. Initially, I had taken an action to follow up with Kim Albertelli or Lisa Stahovic about the MLS listing, but when Mark was going to follow up on the process. But Anna, after our discussion, when you said that you and Bartlett were pursuing separately, potentially with Lipoli, I put on hold the MLS discussion I was going to have with Lisa. So,
well, actually, I'm not pursuing anything with Lipoli, so that's just incorrect. So I had mentioned that Bartlett had conveyed this idea to them. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Pursuing is the right word. I sent an email to the engineer who's most frequently at the planning board. And he and I have chatted and joked about stuff, but I just wrote him and said that there's this parcel that I understand is on the market or will be on the market, and it's next to Pine Tree Park. And I thought it was adjoining on two sides. It's actually adjoining on one side. But it's a parcel, and it would be a good location for housing. And I asked him to ask the people who think about affordable housing at Lipoli to think about this lot as a possible site for affordable housing. And I have not heard back. So I don't know where that has gone. My experience is that you can't predict from a non-response what Lipoli was actually doing. I sent an email to some people at Lipoli about the library mini golf months in advance, and I didn't hear anything. And they showed up and did a lot. So I just don't know what's happening.
Okay.
It was a very small effort on my part.
okay.
So Marianne, if you wouldn't mind taking my name off there, because it's Bartlett who was exploring that.
Okay. I think it was something that you had suggested though, right? You were involved somehow, but it's gone.
Okay.
Okay. The next property we discussed was Russell Street. It's at the bend of Russell Street. Positives, it's a large lot, easy access, owned by the town already, Park and Rec. It's close to town sewer, could be extended, probably at not an outrageous cost. Need to check wetlands restrictions, and then Maren provided this further update after we met.
Well, yeah, outrageous cost. The Pine Tree Park is in the process of, or they will be in the process of connecting to the sewer, which runs down Shattuck Street. And we're estimating the costs of designing and engineering and implementing this connection from the existing septic systems to the town sewer is as close to $1 million. That does include whatever dealing needs to be done with the existing leaching fields, but it's not a trivial thing to design, engineer, and implement a pipe from one place to another.
But there are no pipes there currently, so it's slightly simpler.
Well, there's water lines in there and stuff, but yeah, right. And there's no leaching fields.
The property we're talking about is undeveloped.
Right. So it's simpler, but it's still a substantial number of dollars.
Yeah.
I think it was just a proximity that made it a neutral and not a negative. It's not like bringing it down to Durkee. There's still a need to check wetlands restrictions. And yeah. So again, we were just kind of having preliminary discussions and leveraging Marin's knowledge to help us consider what could be, potential next projects. The other one we talked about was behind the police station's location near shopping on town sewer owned by the town. Access challenges with the easement. Likely it's probably possible, but maybe awkward. That alone could be, a deterrent. And then also being right behind the police station, they may not support it. There might be reasons why it would not work beyond politics. And then just toward the end of the meeting, we discussed the Cataldo property. And Mark, I think you were going to have a conversation with Joe to see if that would even be a remote possibility.
I've reached out to him. I haven't heard back.
Did I miss anything, Marin or Mark?
So the other thing Marin mentioned was was the possibility of potentially combining a bunch of little parcels together and doing one bigger RFP around it. We really didn't spend much time investigating that because the logistics just sound outrageously complicated to manage and put together.
Right.
Marin, does that cover it from your perspective?
That's what I recall too.
Okay.
Any comments from other members?
So I think the goal is kind of like, we're looking, I'll say over the summer at what we think a reasonable next project would be. And then, by sometime, late summer, early fall, maybe we're ready to hit the ground and actually start more actively pursuing it, as opposed to this being like very, very preliminary work to say what we could do. Does that sum it up, Marianne?
Yeah. Yep. Well said.
If there people have other ideas of like, look here, look there, we're willing to like develop them at this level or slightly more detailed to see where we can go. We're not spending any money. We're just doing, introductory research.
Great, thank you. All right, so I want to do a time check. It's 8:32 and we have a agreement that we wouldn't go past 8:30. Does everybody have like maybe another 5 to 7 minutes in them?
Okay.
Sure.
It sounds so excited. Okay. All right. So under trustee and town planner updates, I'll open it up. Does anyone have any updates that they want to talk about?
Well, perhaps I should do a quick recap. I went on a trust funded a training last week, and I'm sure Mark was also there, I believe. I mean, I just looking at the budget, that's budgeting trust member training. I think it's quite appropriate. The last time I went to any training was, I believe, in 2019, and I had assumed it was the same training, but it wasn't. I did go to the one in Devons, but this is a bigger, MHP is a bigger, larger, more organized, and appears to be a much more powerful program. So I encourage everybody to go to this one if they get a chance, and funding too. So we, the first day was the kickstart. There was a lot of fanfare, and then we broke out into sessions, and I went into the session where they were talking about pre-development work. We were educated that consists of desktop surveys, actual surveys, and then review of the concept, looking at utilities, power, gas, telecom, constraints and easements, and things like that. There were sessions for policy. I was more interested in the actual work, and so I went to the ones that talked about what was relevant with what we're doing. And actually, most of the things that they went through are things we're going through now with various projects that we're handling, especially the Durkee project. There was a session on housing development on public land, and I thought that was quite interesting, so I went to that. They talked about the RFP process, identifying the land, going to town meeting to get approval, assign disposition, and so on and so forth. But something caught my eye. They talked about RFP cautions. Do not do prescriptive designs. Do not send in multiple designs. No post-award approvals. No post-award inspections over and above what was approved. No ground lease under 50 years, and so on and so forth. It was a lot to take in, so I'm just going to skim through my little notes here. And they talked about common RFP mistakes. People assume that the RFP look similar, but there are certain things that could create problems. So they recommend never copying someone else's RFP. Always have sufficient information for the developer and the feasibility. Design should not be too prescriptive. There shouldn't be inconsistent RFP information. Do not send in inappropriate requests. Do not do post-award approvals. And then they talked about funding. There's conventional real estate funding, equity, debt. They talked about constraints such as cash flow, operating expenses, and so on and so forth. And there was talk about the low-income housing tax credit. I'm not sure we're actually doing that here.
No.
That's typically for much larger projects. Yeah.
Right. And then they talked about fair housing rules and so on and so forth.
Great.
And some towns have devised specialized mechanisms for locating vulnerable properties before they go into the hand of developers. Some target the poor and the elderly and try to get them before a developer gets them. Some look at organizations, because a lot of organizations are running out of money, like charitable organizations. And some use potential deferred maintenance buildings. Usually old multifamily homes can be used for housing development. And then one town, Greenfield, has developed an app to find properties that they can go ahead and develop on low income. So that was just a brief rundown of a very extensive 2-day program, and I encourage everybody to go to that.
Great. Thank you, Angus. And when the RFP comes out, you'll now know what to look for. All right. Anyone else?
I have a couple. I also was at that conference. Angus summed it up pretty well. A couple weeks ago, Marianne and I went to a meeting in Concord, which was run by MAPC, I believe, or Magic, I'm not sure which, where they got together the different affordable housing trust organizations and talked about, we basically compared notes and on different things. People were very excited to hear about our small grants program. It was, they were very keen on more information and wanting to set things up similar. I'll let someone, Marianne or Maren, can talk about the program we went to last week. I have tomorrow, I am going into Somerville, and I think Maren is as well, to see one of the Lab 9 affordable project. We're going to tour that site tomorrow morning. So that's my other update is after our meeting in May, I've reached out to 4 or 5, I think that's a number, different affordable housing trusts to see how that have rental assistance programs, and all of the programs advertise that they have a 3-year cap. So I reached out to them to see what happens to their participants when they hit 3 years, and also to compare what some of their guidelines are. And to date, 2 programs have responded to me on the 3-year question, and both said they do not extend past 3 years. One said they had only one circumstance on which they extended past 3 years. One of the 2 said they've had one circumstance they extended past the 3 years, and that was someone that was had terminal cancer, who they extended for a short period of time, but no one goes beyond 3 years so far. So I'm going to follow up with the other ones and have more conversations around that so that we can tighten up our LRAP policies.
Great. That'll be just in time for the next meeting when Matthew will be here.
It's nice that Mark has gotten this feedback from the other programs, because so it breaks your heart if people are still having problems, and then you turn around and say to them no. But certainly, perhaps we could write into ours specific conditions that may trigger extension, like terminal cancer or certain other medical or other condition. Perhaps that might help, I believe. And I also want to add that at my meeting, it was also the same. People were excited to learn about Littleton. They say, oh, we hear good things are going on in Littleton. Tell us about it, and so on and so forth. And I also actually spoke with Laura, who was also a presenter at the conference. She had said that she had already visited the day before to inspect the barn.
Mm-hmm. So. Yep. Great. Marianne, Mark mentioning Lab 9 or 9 Lab 9 to to everybody. So did you want to talk about the visit that we had with them?
Sure. I can talk about that. I shared took some notes on that one as well. But basically they presented us a proposal for a 30-unit, 3-story affordable housing building, right? One that's already designed. They took some of the best practices and the favorite things that POA likes about affordable housing, and they incorporated that into design, kind of a pre-designed building. And that's what they'd like to do. So they said that when they go into these affordable housing projects, about 30% of the cost is soft cost. It's architecture, it's design, it's, the project management overhead, and the remaining 70% is construction. So the concept is if they have this pre-designed building, then they can really reduce and, try to eliminate a lot of the soft costs. It was really interesting. It was a good design. It was 60% 2-bedroom, 30% 3-bedroom, and 10% 1-bedroom. Do I have those right, Anna?
I think it was the other way around. More 1-bedrooms, fewer 3-bedrooms.
Okay. Yeah. So that's roughly the mix. So mostly 2, but then a split of single bedroom. Some of the aspects that they wanted to incorporate, they all have their own laundry. They all have open layout, open floor plan, and there's a 1-to-1 for parking spaces. And that entire the building, so the 30 unit building plus 30 parking spaces can fit on 0.6 acres, which I think we both kind of immediately thought of the Shattuck Street lot, right, which is an acre. But I think that there's good potential there. They're eager to do business with us. They understand that whatever we do would require RFP, and we have processes to go through. But I thought it was a good exercise, and really interesting.
Yes, and so based off of the conversation that Mark had earlier about meeting with the Magic group that is discussing affordable housing, we connected the Lab 9 folks with the Magic folks to see if they can make some additional connections for their business there, in the spirit of being able to get more small affordable housing projects. So thank you, Marianne, for sharing all that. All right, anybody else?
I have one more quick one. We talked about La Poli. A draft agenda for the select board meeting on Monday, the 23rd came out, and La Poli updates from the La Poli company are on our agenda for somewhere between 6:30 and 8. Don't ask me more than that, because that's exactly what I know.
What's the date?
Monday, the 23rd.
June? This
Yes.
Monday? Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Righty. Thank you, Mark.
I know we're short on time, but there was one thing I wanted to present. Mark mentioned the the Assabet conference that we went to, Mara and Cooper, Mark and I. 2 topics. One was design-based zoning. Couldn't give that justice in a 1-minute summary, so maybe we can save that for a future meeting. But the other one talked about schools and the impact of development on schools. And just what I wanted to share, what I thought was interesting about that was, let me know when you can see this slide.
Yep.
This shows school enrollment trends, and really interesting. So this starts in 2002-2003 school year, already a steady decline, and then this drop off is obviously COVID, but we haven't recovered. So this is the general trend statewide in Massachusetts. The interesting part, though, they broke it down by all of the towns that are in this consortium, and Littleton is bucking the trend. All of the other school or the towns are decreasing, and Littleton is up 3%. I think there was one other town that was it Bolton? That's Boylston. It's more flat, but everyone else is varying degrees of decline. But that was kind of interesting to see that. A lot of research went into the studies. Most of them showed that they said that there's not a tremendous impact on housing and the demands. They talked about fixed versus variable, but they also said that several of the studies were funded by developers. So.
You all for sharing. That's all good.
Yeah, it was interesting. Again, in the interest of time, I won't go into more detail, but it was definitely a worthwhile session.
Thanks, Marianne. All right, so on to our next agenda item real quick, membership reapplication. This year it's Susan, Marianne, and myself. And I did want to inform everybody that this is going to be my last meeting because I am not seeking reappointment. So you all will get to continue to have fun. All right. We have minutes from May 19th and May 27th.
Are Susan and Marion putting in for reappointments? Cool.
I did, yes.
My appointment is actually through the COA, so I have to wait for a COA board to approve it.
But you're planning on staying?
At the moment. Because
If we're done by 9.
Because nobody else wants it. But now I am vice chair of the COA board, so that adds another thing to my plate, and I'm not sure.
Okay.
All right. So
Thank you.
Minutes. Any comments or questions from the May 19th or May 27th meeting minutes? All right, seeing none. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Susan and Mark. All right, so Angus,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Marianne,
Yes.
and Anna's a yes. Okay, so we are approving those minutes. And next is scheduling the July meeting. What would be the date for the July meeting?
See, if it's usually the third Tuesday or second. Or,
Usually the 3rd, so the 15th.
yeah.
All right.
Works for me.
I will be unavailable that day.
Would you rather move it
Is
to
it a
another
select board? Is it a select?
I am on vacation that week.
Oh, vacation.
Um,
Yeah, the July 15th, I will also be out of the country.
How about the 22nd?
I believe I can do the 22nd. I might be exhausted, but I should be here.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can do the 22nd.
Great. All right, so the July meeting will be on Tuesday, July 22nd at 6:30 p.m. Right, any other business? If not, let's
So,
do it.
And then just a quick question, you kind of glossed over your announcement that you wouldn't be continuing. Is that you won't continue as chair or you won't be on the trust overall?
No, I will not be on the trust. Yeah.
Mm,
Well, I'm very sorry to hear that.
mm,
It's,
very sorry to hear that.
Well, there's only so many hours in the day. So,
Well, I'd like to thank Anna for her time on the trust and wish her well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Anna. We're going to miss you.
thanks, everyone. Well,
Great work.
thank you. And thank you all for continuing on this work as well.
So, Anna, I think that your non-renewal will be a big loss to the trust, because you came in and slipped in, and it was just seamless. and you went straight to the point on all the issues we were dealing with at the time. And I think that your work is visible in where the trust is today, with all the accomplishments the trust has, and the accolades that the trust has been receiving, both internally and externally. Like I said, in Worcester, people say, "Oh, you're from Littleton. Oh, goodness, we hear a lot of good things going on in Littleton. How did you do this? Tell us about this," and so on and so forth. But I think that your steady, even handling of matters, your judgment, and all of that is crucial to the success of the trust. And I can't thank you enough for the quality and the high standards you brought when you assumed the chairmanship of the trust. So thank you, and Godspeed, whatever it is you're going to do next.
Plan a wedding. So anyway, well, thank you, Angus. I appreciate those words. I appreciate everyone's kind words. So I'll know where to look for great affordable housing conversation. So thank you again. All right. Have a good night, everyone.